Dave Fine to come speak with us. He's an attorney based in the Boston area who's worked with a wide variety of lawsuits in this and related areas. I've asked him to talk more generally, a little bit about DES lawsuits, but also more generally about when the law is the right way to go. Is that what I asked you to talk about? Everybody like.
My name is David Fine. I'm with the firm of Rubin Hay in Framingham. In 1976, I was in the firm of Rosenberg, Baker, and Fine. And in April 1976, we filed the lawsuit of Peyton versus Abbott Labs on behalf of DES daughters in Massachusetts. There are several aspects of DES litigation I could discuss, but today I want to focus on three. First, the legal situation we confronted was highly, highly unusual. After all, in his 1971 paper, Dr. Herbst made a connection between the ingestion of DES and an injury not in the women who had ingested it, but in their daughters. Further, the injury had manifested itself years after the daughters had been exposed to DES. Further still, there was enormous uncertainty and concern about the nature and extent of injuries related to exposure, that exposure to DES would cause. To say this was not the usual tort situation is a great understatement. In the usual tort situation, you have one defendant and one plaintiff. The plaintiff has been injured and is seeking compensation. As my former partner David Rosenberg would say, this was the classic private law situation. DES litigation, however, had to be viewed as well from the public law perspective. What did the law need to do to help ensure that DES daughters were fully compensated for the injuries they sustained as a result of the drug company's conduct? And I think the answer is the law changed some, but not as much as it might have or should have. In our complaint in the Peyton case, we sought a number of what would be regarded as unconventional remedies. One thing we sought was a program. We wanted the defendants to fund a program to identify DES daughters, because that was a big concern at that point. We brought the case as a class action on behalf of DES daughters, and initially the case was certified as a class action, which was very unusual. But then it was later decertified, because what generally happens is where damage issues, individual issues predominate, you can't, the courts are unwilling to have the cases proceed as class actions. And then another remedy that we sought initially was an insurance fund. We thought that an insurance fund was really well tailored to the problem. Here were these many people who had a risk. Only a certain percentage of them, a small percentage of them, would get clear cell adenocarcinoma. And we thought that an insurance fund would be a good way to address the problem. Eventually the case was resolved without the insurance fund remedy, but that was something that we put out there and discussed. Right. A second aspect of the cases was that DES had been marketed generically. Some 200 companies had marketed DES, and many of the women who had ingested DES couldn't identify the particular manufacturer that manufactured the DES that they had taken. The identifying which company's DES had been ingested by which mother was an enormous problem. And I think it's here that DES litigation had its greatest accomplishment because market share liability was recognized early on in California. Market share liability was eventually recognized in New York. There was a decision in Massachusetts that didn't expressly recognize market share but allowed for a non-identification remedy. And that was the recognition of non-identification remedy, a market share remedy, was a very big accomplishment of the DES litigation. Then the third aspect that I wanted to allude to, and this has already been discussed, but one of the things that struck me as remarkable about the DES, and listening to the talks today, I've learned that things are even more mysterious than I had thought that they were. But one of the really unusual aspects of the story is that here it is 1953, and this Diekman study, it's a double-blind study, and it finds that DES is not effective to prevent miscarriage. 1953. And yet it continues to be prescribed for that purpose for years afterwards. And I listened attentively to what Carrie Christensen said about this, because I guess partially it was the influence of the Smiths. But one of the reasons why the efficacy issue is very much on my mind is because, as you know, there is talk now that regulations should be cut back and drugs shouldn't be tested for efficacy. And if there's a counterexample to that, DES is certainly one of them.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I find all this very upsetting. I don't know if I've answered you. I'm going to, I guess I'm the last speaker, and I just want to tell you a little bit about my story and my journey. Yeah, I hate that slide. You can move that slide. Yeah. As the working title, I never changed it. Okay, well, I'll get to that. Good. Okay, so, I am the executive director of DES Action USA, and I'm delighted to have that role at this point. It's an honor to sit in this chair. Many hardworking women sat in that chair before me. I was 13 when my mother found out that she was given DES when she was pregnant with me. And that's when I found out that my reproductive organs are completely non-functional. That I would never be able to bear a child. This is the important part. When you're 13, you actually really don't care about that too much. It's really, it's a cosmic concept, having a child, who cares? I didn't care. But as I got older, I got angrier. And because what was a given for most people, what's an assumption in people's lives, was stolen from me. It was stolen for no reason at all. When I married, it was difficult for my husband's parents to understand, to accept that their biological line would not be carried on to their son. DES affects every person in the family. In my 20s, I joined a lawsuit, civil shame law, with other DES daughters. My mother reached out to her obstetrician. She'd already been in touch with him several times. Trusted Dr. Hughes. Family loved him. He was in Syracuse, New York. And we'd moved from Syracuse, New York when I was 6 years old. So when she reached back to him and asked him for her records and was it possible that I had been exposed to DES, he said, certainly wasn't possible at all. He would never get that out. Sadly, he had destroyed all of his files when he retired a year or two earlier. So my mother then, on advice of DES Action, called, remember the pharmacist's name was Irv, looked up his telephone number, called Irv. He had had a fire. Ugh, what a bad coincidence if he'd had a fire. All the records from that particular time period were destroyed. But his pharmacy was fine. Other DES daughters heard the same story. And destroying records, it happened all over the country. And it wasn't unusual, but it was cruel. And it was just so unnecessary. Because very quickly it became clear that the doctors weren't at risk. The pharmacists were not at risk of being sued. DES was the standard of care. Everybody else was doing it. These were all reasons to protect the doctor and the pharmacist. I couldn't sue them. But I could sue the pharmaceutical company. I could sue Eli Lilly and 199 other companies, and we did. But the reason it was cruel is because I will never know how much DES I was exposed to. I don't know what my risks are. The research people would have so much more information if the doctors had done as ACOG requested that they do in 1971. Please alert your patients to what you gave them so they can get proper care. And the response of some of those doctors was wonderful and heroic, and they were heartbroken, and some of those doctors put their kids through college. So, I am not angry at all. But, DES was given 60 years ago, and as bad as that was, and as concerning as the ongoing effects are, it's not the only drug that we should be worried about. And I thought you might want a couple of examples of drugs that I am concerned about today. Lupin is suddenly been showing up. I'm not even sure I'm saying the name of the drug right. Lupin. It was given to slow or stop the onset of early puberty, and was given just, it's still being given. That it's an indication on the label. They can do that and do that. But they're finding that the girls who are in their 20s are suffering from osteopenia, from osteoporosis, crooked spine, replaced hip in their 20s. It works in the brain. It's a drug that works in the brain to stop the flow of estrogen. And if you're going to give a drug that works in the brain, it's going to affect the brain. So they're also finding links to nervous system, psychiatric issues. Men were given Lupin also, and they're showing higher levels of frequent heart attacks, strokes, and sudden death. And yet, Lupin is given to women now who are starting IVF to manage the level of estrogen, despite the fact that the label on Lupin warns that pregnant women should not take Lupin because it can cause birth defects. The next slide would be Yaz. Yaz has been getting a lot of press. It's still out there. It's still available. It'll increase, it seems to increase your risk of stroke by 70% or more. Please don't smoke if you're using Yaz. Those two risk factors are just too awful. Next slide is Escher. I call it Essure. I've heard it called Escher. It's an implantable IUD or IUD type device. It seems to be in the habit of unimplanting itself and meandering around your abdominal cavity, and which creates a lot of pain and a lot of complications. And I can, please feel free to contact me directly, and I can get you more articles and information about this. This is very top-line information. And I would like to say that please, anybody listening or anyone in the audience who wants more information or citations for any of the information given, you can probably find it on our website at www.desaction.org. If you can't find it there, my email is there, info@desaction.org, or Sue at DESAction, or Julie, or Julie at DESAction.org. Any one of us will track down the citations and put you in touch with more people for more information. So about 5 years ago, I realized that I was at a point where I could do pretty much anything I wanted, which is really great. I'd had a long career. I didn't need to be earning a salary at that point. So I thought about what could I do? I have a lot more years ahead of me. And I realized that while I couldn't solve world hunger or create world peace, I was still worried about DES, and I knew that DES wasn't the only drug out there causing problems. And so I started reading up on other drugs, and I learned that every medicine has side effects, every single one of them. Every one takes a toll on your body. Whether it's over-the-counter, whether it's prescription, whether it's a dietary supplement, whether it's an herbal remedy, they all have potential side effects, they all have potential long-term effects, and they have unknown interactions because new drugs are being entered into the marketplace. So even if they're tested with previous interactions, they can't be current. Nobody can be current. Virtually no drug is tested for long-term effects before it enters the marketplace. And adverse events for drugs is the 4th leading cause of death in America today. 80% of all drugs are withdrawn from the marketplace because of side effects to women. And remember, a drug that harms one person in the family impacts the entire family. In my opinion, the average person does not know this information, and in my opinion, the average person depends on their doctor. I remember Dr. Hughes, and I think if I can do anything, I would love to stop another DES. And I can't, but I can try. So, I started MedShadow Foundation. Where are we on slides? You want to skip to the next slide? Oh, right. So I started MedShadow Foundation. And what we are is a social media platform. It's a website, and social media. And our goal is to educate the public that medicines have their place. Medicines save lives. We are all probably going to need medicines at some point in our lives. But be careful and think about it. And start medicines only when you really need to. So many of the conditions that we're taking medicines for, high blood pressure, diabetes, cholesterol, have other answers. Diet and exercise. It's very boring, but diet and exercise and not smoking are the most important things you can do for your health. And if that can't manage it, then medicines are there to do their job. So I ask you all to get angry. Get really angry. Get angry when the FDA is underfunded. Get angry when they say we're not going to test drugs anymore. People should take the risk. Honest to God, one of the people leading our country today, not the head leader, said, I think that people should just have the right to take the risk with the drug. Desperate people should not be put in that position, I think. Organize. Find other people who feel the way that you do and create change. So, thank you. We're going to end the Facebook Live now.